When Palpatine tells Anakin the chilling tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, he makes it sound as if the legend was 100 years old, when in fact Plagueis had lived quite recently in the prequel timeline and had a heavy hand in many galactic affairs. In fact, what most people do not know about Plagueis is that he was alive and well for the majority of the events of the Phantom Menace. In fact, we get a very good idea of what all he was doing behind the scenes during those events. Darth Plagueis, otherwise known as Hego Damask, stayed quite busy, specifically in the political sphere of things. The grand plan was reaching a state of realization, and the Sith Lords Plagueis and Sidious were needing to garner more power in the Senate, so that the steps towards their assimilation of ultimate power could begin. Our knowledge today comes from the Darth Plagueis novel, where in the final chapters we are shown the events running parallel to that of the Naboo crisis from the perspective of Plagueis and Sidious. So, come along with us today as we summarize the events of the novel and talk about everything Plagueis was doing in the shadows during the Phantom Menace, and the exact moment that the Dark Lord met his end. In the days leading up to the Naboo crisis, Plagueis had grown quite disengaged with the Sith grand plan, and was mostly having his apprentice Sidious take care of the side of the business. You see, Plagueis had just began perfecting his ability in manipulating the midichlorians, and was preoccupied with that so much that Palpatine had to handle the serious business, much to Sidious's disapproval. Around this time, Sidious was growing increasingly more frustrated with the idea that he had all his training in the dark side, but was still being treated by his master more or less as an errand boy. But we will come back to this later. What Plagueis was also doing during this time was working with Sidious to secure Dooku, and ensuring that the Jedi Master would fall to the dark side seamlessly. The Sith Lords were facilitating the beginning of a coming war to the galaxy, and they needed a powerful force to head the Separatist movement. Master Dooku was a great candidate. He was powerful, skilled, and wise, and the Jedi Order were practically handing him over to the Sith on a silver platter, due to their continued arrogance. As Jedi Master Dooku's misgivings with the Council increased, Plagueis was doing everything he could behind the scenes to prod Dooku further in that direction, using his contacts in the criminal underworld to stage events that would garner Jedi action, and then ensuring that casualties were involved, and many Jedi were killed. This compounded with the frequent meetings held by Palpatine and Dooku, where they would both discuss current affairs, making things move along rather nicely. The main concern at the immediate moment, though, was getting Palpatine elected as the Supreme Chancellor. A good portion of the novel is spent exploring the political atmosphere of Coruscant and the Republic, and having Palpatine and Plagueis performing various kinds of subterfuge in order to ensure Sidious's place as a welcome and beloved public figure. For 20 years, Senator Palpatine had managed to evade any sort of scandal, and he was well liked by a great many senators. With the current Supreme Chancellor Valorum's leadership being called into question, the Sith Lords needed a good shove in the right direction in order to secure the chancellorship, and the Senate's vote for Palpatine to be placed in office. The plan and the target was control over the Republic, and once Palpatine was voted into chancellorship, he was told to elect Plagueis as his co-chancellor, leading to the two of them having undisputed political power as they controlled the war from the shadows. The book follows Palpatine as he takes control of the Trade Federation and their vast droid army, placing Viceroy Gunray in the position that he was in, and then whipping him into a frenzy by telling the Republic the newly imposed taxation of the trade-free zones. This angered the Viceroy so much that Palpatine manipulated him into blocking Naboo in protest, a move that would surely capture the attention of the Republic. For a long while, Hego Damask and Palpatine have been battling with Naboo's king, a man by the name of Varuna, over the Trade Federation stepping in to become the sole trader of Naboo's vast and powerful plasma resources. It has gone so far that King Varuna even makes an assassination attempt on Plagueis, which of course the Dark Lord survived, but not unscathed. The man was left heavily damaged and forever bound to wearing a respirator. However, by now the king had become removed from his monarchy due to some manipulation by the Sith Lords, and a young Queen Amidala was placed on the throne. Since she was so young, the plan was for the blockade to last no more than a month, assuming the queen would buckle under the threat of her people starving, and sign a treaty with the Trade Federation to hand over the rights of the plasma resource. The blockade itself also doubled as a gaining sympathy for Senator Palpatine, as so the Sith would garner some pity votes for Palpatine since his home planet was invaded by the Trade Federation. To make things as simple to follow, For a vast majority of the Phantom Menace, Plagueis is behind the scenes lobbying for Palpatine to be put in office. As a quick tangent, I wanted to mention something pretty insane that happens in the novel. At one point, Plagueis decides to go visit the home of a former king of Naboo in order to get revenge for the assassination attempt. He then slips past all of the king's security using only the Force, and appears in the king's bedroom. Plagueis then reveals himself as a Dark Lord of the Sith to the terrified former king, and then manipulates the man's midichlorians to turn on one another. Without ever lifting a hand, he simply kills the king with the Force itself. We all know about the Force ability of Deadly Sight, where some Sith naturally are born with this particular ability to harm, or even kill someone by glaring at them. Plagueis has done something different. He has perfected his control over the midichlorians to where he can literally will someone to die. Think of how unfathomably powerful Plagueis is here, and I just wanted to mention that. Continuing, the plan of the Sith would be rushed prematurely, as they needed to find a way to Chancellor Valorum and to circumvent the Senate in order to get 2 Jedi to the world of Naboo as the ambassadors of the Republic. Sidious finds this out while in a meeting with Plagueis, and there is a moment of panic between the Sith as they realize that Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi may be able to get the spineless Viceroy to break and reveal the true intentions of the blockade, exposing the Sith. While Palpatine starts organizing the droid army invasion and starts prepping his apprentice Maul, Plagueis decides to pay a visit to Master Sifo Dyas, with whom he had a conversation with some time ago about the state of the Republic. Sifo Dyas, who was none the wiser to Higo Damask's true identity, spoke openly with him about how he felt about the Republic and the Jedi being run in recent eras. The Sith Lord manipulated the Jedi Master into going about both the Republic and the High Council to organize the creation of the clone army on Kamino. Sifo Dyas is actually a lot more open to this idea, purely because of Higo Damask's ability to paint a rather graphic picture of what could come 10 to 15 years in the future if the Republic and the Trade Federation continue to act as they are. All is going well for Plagueis until he received a troubling transmission from his apprentice. Sidious, who had just met with Dooku, learned of the fact that Qui-Gon Jinn had returned from Tatooine with a slave boy who was just 9 years old, a highly Force-sensitive and supposedly one that was conceived without the presence of a father. The Sith Lords once again are shocked by another sudden turn of events, as they realize the Force must have struck back at their ritual. When they had attempted to make this perfect being, the will of the Force had rebelled against them, and created the Jedi Chosen One. In this scene where Anakin is getting tested by the High Council, Plagueis is back at the apartment, frantically looking for the boy. Plagueis wishes to see the young man with his own eyes, to sense his real power. He runs into one of Padme's handmaidens, who he even mind controls into telling him where Anakin was. Plagueis then swiftly makes his way to one of the landing docks of Coruscant to watch as the 2 Jedi, the Queen, Jar Jar, and the young boy, all begin loading into the Sky Taxi. And then, this happens to Plagueis. Lifting his face with the macro binoculars, he stretched out with the Force and fell victim to an assault of perplexing images. Ferocious battles deep in space, the clashing of lightsabers, partitions of radiant light, a black helmeted cyborg rising from a table. By the time his gaze had returned to the platform, Qui-Gon and the boy had disappeared. Following this, Plagueis was terrified of the implication of his vision, and deduced that he had to stop the boy from being trained, believing that Qui-Gon Jinn was the key to everything, that Qui-Gon must die. Plagueis mostly stayed out of the Battle of Naboo, just letting Sidious take the reins on this one, and eventually, their efforts paid off, and Palpatine was nominated for office. That night though, after the conference, Sidious and Plagueis celebrated their win with some fine wine. Bottle after bottle, Sidious toasted to the efforts of his master, continuously reciting and perfecting his speech for the next morning. Eventually, Plagueis became so drunk that he passed out on the couch. Sidious was about to take his leave, when the dark side of the Force whispered in his ear, told him that the time was now. Throwing his cloak to the side without hesitation, Sidious shot a web of Force lightning at his sleeping master, catching him while he was weak and vulnerable, finally embracing a long rest. The Force ability ended up frying his respirator, and since the Dark Lord could not catch a breath, Plagueis was unable to call upon the Force to restore his midichlorians. Sidious would mock his master, let out all of his frustrations, sending bolt, torrent after torrent of lightning searing through his weakened master's body. Creating a force storm, Sidious battered Plagueis with everything in the room before finally choking him to death. The end of Darth Plagueis the Wise, both in Star Wars lore and in The Phantom Menace. Well, my friends, we thank you so much for watching this. If you've been enjoying our Star Wars lore, it would help us out a great deal if you could take the time to like the video, as well as subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, if there's any part of Star Wars lore that interests you, be it the planets, the Jedi, the Sith, the ancient times of the Star Wars galaxy, please let us know in the comments down below, as we would love to research and document them here at the archives. As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting us today, and may the Force be with you.